The Legend of the R.M.S. Titanic, Part 8. April 14th, 1912. After striking the iceberg, R.M.S. Titanic has an hour, two at most, to live. Captain Smith knows he has to get the passengers off the ship. However, he knows that that there are only 20 lifeboats on board Titanic, enough for half of the passengers on board. J. Bruce Ismay realizes his mistake, as he was being too greedy. But let's wait until the inquiry to hear that. Now, Smith has to take evasive action. He instructs Third Officer Pittman to wake all the officers to get him on deck and raid the lifeboats, but not to and to wake up the passengers, but not to tell them what is going on. Just tell them that they have to get up, dress warmly, and get into their lifebelts. Titanic is slowly beginning to sink. He heads down to the Marconi room to tell Jack Phillips and Harold Wright, who has just woken up because of the commotion outside, to set out the distress signal. Back then, it was known as CQD, Come Quick Danger. Captain Smith gives the coordinates, and Jack Phillips begins sending messages. Then Harold Wright has an idea. Say, why don't we use that new signal they've been talking about? SOS. Might be the only chance of using it. With a slight chuckle, Phillips begins using the SOS signal. Titanic is the first ever ship to use the SOS distress signal. Soon they get a response. The German steamer Frankfurt is the first ship to respond to Titanic's distress signal. However, due to them only speaking German, they couldn't understand what the situation was. First, the operator asks, "Should I tell my captain? Are you in serious danger? Are you coming to meet us?" After a few attempts, Phillips is getting pretty annoyed with the Frankfurt, and now asks other ships to respond. SS Mount Tempo responds to Titanic's distress signal, and only the Frankfurt, who is still having trouble trying to figure out what Titanic is talking about, she rushes to the rescue. Even at full speed, however, she has 4 hours to reach Titanic. SS Frankfurt also receives the distress signal, but she is too far away. All Virginian can do is just relay the messages on, as well as another liner. The SS La Provence. She is 70 miles away from Titanic, and won't reach her in time, so she relays on the messages. SS Burma is 70 miles away from Titanic, and relays on the messages. She's trying to assume the incident and hoping she can help. Meanwhile, up on the boat deck, things are not looking very well. Passengers are then coming up on deck, then going back inside because it's too cold to be outside anyway, and they think it's a bit unnecessary for them to be called so late in the night. Captain's orders is captain's orders, an officer later told one of the passengers. However, they think that it's unsafe to be in these small little wooden boats and to be on a strong steel ocean liner. What they do not know is Titanic is sinking beneath the waves. And in one area of the ship, water is starting to enter Scotland's Road. Scotland's Road was a long corridor that would extend the entire length of the ship through E-deck, where steam dispatchers were mostly used, as well as the boiler rooms. Water begins entering this corridor via the boiler room. The water then explodes into the Turkish baths, which is actually above the Scotland's Road. So basically, Scotland's Road, the water enters Scotland's Road, which is above the Turkish bath, and explodes in the Turkish bath underneath Scotland's Road. The great ship is sinking beneath the waves, and her lavish interiors are becoming sunken and wet. Lifeboat 7 is the first lifeboat to be launched from Titanic. However, due to the fact that many of the passengers didn't want to board the lifeboat, and also because the officers were too afraid that the lifeboat might buckle, there was only 28 people. After only 70 grown men can actually board the lifeboat. There were only 28 people on board this lifeboat. This was a huge mistake and a huge error, as the lifeboats had actually been tested at Belfast. The officers didn't know about this, however. Among these in lifeboat number 7 is Dorothy Gibson, a famous actress. The next to be launched is lifeboat number 5. However, number 5 is only carrying about 36 people, and also is afraid of buckling. That is why she was filled so low. Even though Smith ordered Pittman to wake everyone, he didn't wake Harold Lowe, Titanic's fifth officer. For some reason, some of the officers didn't like Lowe that very much. Pittman decided not to wake him up. However, after hearing a sort of bang on his window, Lowe comes out on deck to see what is going on, still in his night clothes. Murdoch tells him about this entire ordeal, and Lowe gets to work immediately, helping Murdoch load passengers in the lifeboat number 5. Lifeboat number 5 leaves with only 36 people on board. That lifeboat is under the command of 3rd Officer Pittman. However, there is some hope. Captain Smith sees a ship on the horizon, a light. Many of the passengers also see this, and thinking that they will be saved, decide not to board any of the lifeboats. However, the ship never responds. Meanwhile, on the SS Californian, things are a bit strange. The SS Californian, a Leyland steamer, has stopped for the night because of it being blocked by ice. This ship will be the final ship to be in contact with Titanic before she struck the iceberg. Stanley Lord, who has gone to bed at this point, receives a phone call via the bridge saying that there is a slight ship on the horizon. It's unknown what ship it is. The only ship that was around was the Titanic. Stanley Lord doesn't think it's a Titanic, though, judging that it looks like a small steamer when he went out on deck earlier that night. However, he decides to tell the officers of California to communicate with the unknown ship via a Morse code lamp. Meanwhile, on the slowly but dangerously listing Titanic, Smith orders 4th Officer Boxhall to deploy distress rockets and also communicate via a Morse code lamp. The officers on board Californian also see these rockets in the sky, but they think it's only company rockets. However, they still try to communicate with the ship via a Morse lamp. Meanwhile, in the Marconi room, Jack Phillips hears a call from the call sign MKC. Now, what ship has MKC as her call letters? Jack Phillips is shocked. MKC is the call sign for the R.M.S. Olympic, Titanic's older sister ship. She is around 500 miles away from Titanic. Olympic asks about Titanic's situation, and then asks, "Are you sailing to meet us?" Again with the Frankfurt, Phillips gets really angry and tells Olympic that they are sinking fast and putting passengers into the lifeboats. While all this is going on, lifeboats number 8 and number 1 are launched. However, lifeboat number 1 is only launched with only 12 people out of 70 occupants that could have been aboard a lifeboat. 2 of them are the Duff Gordons, Cosmo and Lucille. They'll become very controversial figures in the inquiries after the disaster. Meanwhile, down below in the bowels of the ship, the engineers have a new plan. Instead of trying to save Titanic, they are trying to delay her sinking. And they have to keep the lights on so the passing ships will see Titanic in time. However, the unknown ship on the horizon is unknown who this ship was at the time. Many people say it was a fisher. Many people say it was a trawler. However, the identity of this ship will be known, but it's unknown until later in this documentary. It's around this time that Titanic begins to list to starboard. This is when passengers begin to realize that Titanic is some kind of trouble. Lifeboat number 6 is launched. Under command is Quartermaster Robert Hitchens, who was actually the person who attempted to steer Titanic away from the iceberg at the time of the collision. Unsuccessful. He is in charge of lifeboat number 6. However, he is the only officer on this lifeboat, along with Frederick Fleet, the person who spotted the iceberg. The unsinkable Molly Brown, Molly Brown, is in this lifeboat as well, and she realizes this. She calls up to Second Officer Lightoller as the lifeboat is being lowered. A yachtsman agrees to climb down the rope to the lifeboat. He climbs down the rope. Robert Hitchens immediately orders him to row, and soon enough, Lifeboat 6 is launched into the ocean. However, Captain Smith and Thomas Andrews then realize that the lifeboats are being loaded half the capacity, and so, by megaphone, Captain Smith orders the lifeboats to come back to Titanic. None of the lifeboats return to Titanic. Lifeboat number 16 is launched. Aboard is Violet Jessup, a stewardess. She would become a very common figure, as she was one of the stewardess that was actually aboard R.M.S. Olympic when she cleared with H.M.S. Hawk. Now, she was surviving the Titanic's sinking, Olympic's sister ship. She would be in another sinking with another famous ocean liner. Lowe is put in charge of lifeboat number 14. However, many of the passengers tried to jump from the promenade decks onto lifeboat number 14. However, Lowe held them at gunpoint, saying that, "If anyone orders this lifeboat, I will shoot." This was during a time where Titanic was well in the water, and many of the passengers were beginning to panic. Lifeboat number 14 reaches the water safely. Lowe is in command. Originally, 6th Officer Moody was asked to become in the lifeboat. Even Lightoller. Both declined. After the end of the voyage, at the end of the whole deal, only one out of Lightoller and Moody will survive. It was also during this time that a gantry door was opened in Titanic's port side to let the passengers escape via this door to lifeboats. However, the lifeboats, in fear that they would be caught by Titanic's giant suction as she went down, refused to even get near to the ship. This gantry-way was held open, and water seeped into the doorway. Titanic's starboard list was counterbalanced, and she began a more serious port list. Soon, Titanic's well deck becomes flooded. Now the passengers realize what is going on, but below decks, many of the third-class passengers are not allowed to become on board onboard lifeboats because the officers have ordered the people to lock down third-class passengers until it is safe for the passengers to get on the boat deck. However, many of the passengers are becoming impatient, and Titanic is sinking beneath the waves. Meanwhile, in the Marconi room, one ship does respond to Titanic. She's the Cunard steamer R.M.S. Carpathia. Now remember what I said about White Star Line and Cunard being rivals? Tonight, there'll be no difference. Cunard liners had to help White Star ships in danger. In this case, it was Carpathia. Harold Cottam, the wireless operator, was just about to go to bed until he then hears a call from Cape Race, trying to get to Titanic. He then decides to relay the messages on the Titanic. He knows Phillips and Bride very well. Titanic interrupts Carpathia's message, saying that they are sinking and are in need of immediate assistance. But Phillips gives Cottam his coordinates. "Shall I tell my captain?" Yes, please. We are sinking fast." Captain of Carpathia on this voyage was Arthur Rostron, who had captained many ships in this time: Lusitania, Mauretania, and now Carpathia. He was asleep at this cabin, but when Cottam burst through the door of his cabin, he knew it was urgent. He receives word that this distress signal is from R.M.S. Titanic and that she is sinking fast. Rostron orders no doubt. Carpathia has to come to Titanic's rescue. He orders Carpathia to be turned around and head into the direction of R.M.S. Titanic. But there's a problem. Carpathia's top speed is only 14 knots. She is 58 miles away from Titanic. Like Mount Temple, she has 4 hours to reach Titanic. Rostron knew there won't be enough time, so he orders all available power to be reverted to the engines and everything to be ready to help the survivors. In this voyage, Carpathia will receive a top speed of 17 knots. Now the lifeboat's being filled to capacity, and now many of the passengers are beginning to wonder if the ship is unsinkable at all. Meanwhile, in the Californian, many of the officers realize that the unknown ship on the horizon is beginning to list. They still try to communicate from Morse code. However, Titanic doesn't receive this. Even our wireless operator on California won't wake up. He is still asleep. Californian still sits dead in the water, while Carpathia rushes to the scene of the sinking. Olympic then notifies Titanic that she is on the way, but she is 500 miles away from Titanic. She only has a top speed of 24 knots, the same speed as her sister. Meanwhile, Lifeboat 15 is launched with Lifeboat 13, Lifeboat 13 is nearly swamped underneath Lifeboat 15 and nearly is crushed by Lifeboat 15. They escape just in time. Lifeboat 15 is the most filled out of all the lifeboats that left Titanic, with 65 occupants. At this point, waters begin to fill Titanic more and more rapidly. She's beginning to sink more quicker, and her port list begins to worsen. Still, many of the passengers won't leave the ship. Benjamin Guggenheim says, "We are dressed in our best and are prepared to go down like gentlemen." So is John the Jacob Bastard, who orders his pregnant 18-year-old wife to get into the lifeboat as well. He decides to stay behind. It is the last time Madeline Astor will see her husband. Benjamin Guggenheim will never see his wife again. Meanwhile, Thomas Andrews is ordering many passengers to get onto the lifeboats and carry lifebelts on them. He and his guarantee group tried their best to delay Titanic's sinking and keep the lights on as much as possible. But hope is fading fast. Harold Bryant has to return on the emergency set because the power is starting to go down. Chief Officer Bell in the engine room decides to stay behind, as well as these 33 other engineers in the engine room. Jack Phillips is still away, sending messages, telling ships to come to the rescue of Titanic immediately. The America and other ships began to respond to Titanic. They're too far away. Only Carpathia and Olympic are racing to the scene, as well as the Mountain Temple and several other ships. The unknown steamer on the horizon, however, fails to respond to Titanic's signals. Boxall is then forced to get all the rockets out into the sky until he joins the other officers on the boat deck. Boxall is given command of Lifeboat Number 2. One lifeboat that has a posting story is the story of Lifeboat Number 4. Lightoller, who was on the port side of Titanic, had ordered the officers to open the promenade deck to let the passengers board Lifeboat 4 from the promenade decks. However, they were unknown that Titanic's promenade deck was enclosed, unlike R.M.S. Olympic. Lightoller had forgotten about this, and when he looked over the deck, he still see Lifeboat Number 4. You can see Lifeboat Number 4 right around here. Lifeboat Number 4 is now launched, an hour after the lifeboat was first lowered down to the promenade deck. Hope is running out for Titanic. Now it's down to the collapsibles to be launched. B and D get away safely. A and C are just left there on the boat deck. C is upside down. One of them is Harold Bryant, who is crushed under lifeboat collapsible D, C, but miraculously survived. Titanic's band, which had played to keep the passengers calm during the early minutes of sinking, now played "Near My God to Thee." They have accepted their fates. Captain Smith is last seen on the bridge of R.M.S. Titanic. Thomas Andrews was last seen in the first-class smoking room on board Titanic. He seemed deep in thought as he watched his mighty ship sink beneath the waves. One crew member even said, "Are you going to try for it, Mr. Andrews?" Andrews never responded. One by one, Titanic's bulkheads begin to go, and 4 deep explosions are heard within the ship. Titanic's final message. And water is filling up to the boilers. Titanic's fate is sealed. Many of the people lifeboats have to watch in terror as many of the passengers begin to scream as they fell into the ocean as the mighty Titanic sinks beneath the waves. During Titanic's final moments, 4 gunshots are heard. It is assumed that they came from Murdoch's position on the starboard side. Lightoller is thrown overboard as many of the passengers and crew fight for their lives. The engineers down below know there's no chance. It is said that Titanic's whistles begin to blow as if crying for help. R.M.S. Titanic sinks beneath the waves, many of her interiors crashing down below. The passengers and the lifeboats are forced to witness in horror as their loved ones are killed as Titanic is lost to the ocean. "2:20 a.m., April 15th, 1912. R.M.S. Titanic took 3 years to build. She sank in only 2 hours, and 1,500 people would be dead. The greatest shipping disaster in history had ended. However, for the survivors, their ordeal had just begun.